Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayana Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jayamudire Nashtaprayashu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nandagopakumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha ओम ज्ञानतिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरु श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगना रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवम् साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजन सहितं कृष्ण चैतन्य देवं श्री राधा कृष्ण पादान् सहगना ललिता श्री विशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांता राधा कांता नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिय वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। मुखं करोति वाचालं पंगुं लंघयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुदीनतारिणि परमानंद माधवं श्रीचैतन्येश्वरम्। Hare Krishna and welcome all the devotees. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam 1:18-39. Sava Angiraso Brahman
Sava Angiraso Brahman.
Shrutva Sutra Vilapanam
Shrutva Suta Vilapanam.
Unmilya Shankar Netre
उन्मील्य शनके नेत्रे
Rishtva Chamse Mritoragam.
दृष्ट्वा चांसी मृतोरगम्.
Translation. O Brahmanas, the Rishi who was born in the family of Angir Muni, hearing his son crying, gradually opened his eyes and saw the dead snake around his neck. Any volunteers who would like to read the next one? So since...
Can I try?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Visrajyatam cha paparacha.
विसृज्यतां च
Vatsa kasmadirodisi.
Vatkamadirodisi
Kena vate aprakritam.
Kenavate Pakritam
Iti uktasa nyavedyat.
Iti Uktasanya Vidayat.
Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
He threw the dead snake aside and asked his son why he was crying, whether anyone had done him harm. On hearing this, the son explained to him what had happened. Purport: the father did not take the dead snake on his neck very seriously. He simply threw it away. Actually, there was nothing seriously wrong in Maharaj Parikshit's act, but the foolish son took it very seriously, and being influenced by Kali, he cursed the king and thus ended a chapter of happy history. So in this purport, it is like further explained by Prabhupada, like the silliness of the boy who cursed Maharaj Parikshit. Though like his father did not find anything wrong in the act of Maharaj Parikshit, but it was just the foolishness of the boy who took it very seriously, and he cursed Maharaj. Hari Bol. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Back to you.
Thank you, Mataji. Thank you very much. Anybody else would like to share anything? Okay, we'll go to the next one. Would like to read 41, 1.18.41.
I can try, Prabhuji.
Yes, Madhavi, go ahead.
Nishamya Shaptam Atadarham Narendram. Nishamya Shaptam
Atad Arham Narendram
Sabrahmano Natmajam Abhyanandat. Aho batam ho mahadadyate kritam. Aho
Batamo Mahadadyate Kritam
malapya sidro ururdamo drita. Alapya sidro ururdamo drita. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The father heard from his son that the king has been cursed, although he should never have been condemned, for he was the best amongst all human beings. The rishi did not congratulate his son, but on the contrary began to repent, saying, Alas, what a great sinful act was performed by my son. He has awarded heavy punishment for an insignificant offense. Purport: the king is the best of all human beings. He is the representative of God, and he is never to be condemned for any of his actions. In other words, the king can do no wrong. The king may order hanging of a culprit son of a Brahmana, but he does not become sinful for killing a Brahmana. Even if there is something wrong with the king, he is never to be condemned. A medical practitioner may kill a patient by mistaken treatment, but such a killer is never condemned to death. So, what to speak of a good and pious king like Maharaj Parikshit? In the Vedic way of life, the king is trained to become a Raj Rishi or a great saint, although he is ruling as king. It is the king only by whose good government the citizens can live peacefully and without any fear. The Raj Rishis would manage their kingdom so nicely and piously that their subjects would respect them as if they were the Lord. That is the instruction of the Vedas. The king is called Narendra, or the best amongst the human beings. How then could a king like Maharaj Parikshit be condemned by an inexperienced, puffed up son of a Brahmana, even though he had attained the powers of a qualified Brahmana? Since Shamik Rishi was an experienced good Brahmana, he did not approve of the actions of his condemned son. He began to lament for all that his son had done. The king was beyond the jurisdiction of curses as a general rule. And what to speak of a good king like Maharaj Parikshit? The offense of the king was most insignificant, and his being condemned to death was certainly a very great sin for Shringi. Therefore, Rishi Shamik regretted the whole incident. Hari Bol. So this verse is saying that so once father Shamik Rishi saw the snake, right? We just heard that he threw away the snake. He did not really care about it much. He was not very offended by that. But when he learned that his son Shringi has cursed king to die in 7 days, he was very upset. The translation is saying he did not congratulate his son. The son was expecting that he'll be patted on the back for this act. He was trying to show off to his other childish friends, but actually his father, who's a learned Brahmana, experienced, he considered this a sinful act that his son has performed by willing the king to die like this. Very heavy punishment, very unjustified, disproportionate punishment for a very small, insignificant offense. So, and then in purport, Prabhupada is describing actually it said in the translation also, he should never have been condemned, for he was the best amongst all human beings. So anyways, king is considered to be the best amongst all human beings. So Prabhupada is saying that king is called Narendra, meaning the best amongst all human beings. So he should not be condemned, or he should not be cursed, and whatever he does should be whatever he does is not considered wrong. So even if he does something wrong, or even if there is something wrong with the king, he's never to be condemned. Now this is considering in those times when kings are according to the ruling according to the Vedic injunctions, and are actually Raj Rishis, meaning that they're very pious, very they're the representatives of Krishna. They are ruling according to the will of the Supreme Lord. So they are treated like the Lord himself. So just like one should, whatever a Lord does, we don't condemn him, or we take it as his will. He's not subjected to any curses. Similarly, a king who is as righteous like the Lord, who is operating his kingdom in such a nice way, such a good pious king like Maharaj Parikshit, should not be subjected to curse or punishments like this. And Prabhupada is giving an example of medical practitioner. So this hits very close to the home with me. Medical practitioner may kill a patient by mistaken treatment, but such a killer is never condemned to death. Now we see in Kali Yuga how even though the intentions of the medical practitioner are not to kill, yet they are being punished disproportionately and unjustifiably many times. So so similarly, in this way also, the king has been condemned to death by this inexperienced, childish act of a Brahmana who has the powers of a Brahmana, but he's not very experienced. He does not understand all these intricacies, that how such a great devotee is very rare, how such a great pious king is very rare and should be treated like the Lord himself. So he does not understand. He's just trying to show off his power, his Brahmanical powers to other kids. But his father, Shamik Rishi, who is very experienced, learned Brahman, who knows all the Vedic injunctions, who knows the position of Maharaj Parikshit, who understands that in his rulership, the kingdom has been flourishing so nicely, he does not approve of these actions of his son. So he began to lament about what his son has done. And he's just regretting the whole incident. Okay, that's all I have to share, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. Thank you so much for reading and sharing. Anybody else would like to share something? Okay, we'll go to the next one. Any volunteers who would like to read this? 42. Recite the Sanskrit.
I can read it, Prabhuji.
Yes, thank you, Mataji.
Navenribhirnaradevam parakyam.
Navenribhirnaradevam
Parakyam.
Sammatum arhasi avipakva buddhi. Yatejasa durvishahena gupta. Vidanti bhadrani akuto bhaya praja.
विन्दन्ति भद्राण्यकूतो गया प्रजा
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Oh my boy, your intelligence is immature and therefore you have no who is the best amongst human beings is as good as the personality of Godhead. He is never to be placed on an equal footing with common men. The citizen of the state live in prosperity, being protected by his unsurpassable prowess. So now Shamik Rishi is telling his son Shringi, because he was lamenting for cursing, or maybe he was feeling bad, but he was not able to express. But now his father is telling him that your intelligence is immature. So, and with that immaturity, you did a big mistake, and then he's comparing and telling that the king is amongst the best human beings. He's as good as the personality of Godhead, and he cannot be replaced or compared with the common men. And all the citizens in his kingdom actually live in prosperity because they are being protected by his unsurpassable prowess. So he is the expert king. So that is why everybody in his kingdom, he has expertise as a king. So everybody is in prosperity. So he's now telling the quality about Maharaj Parikshit to his son. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji, for reading and sharing. Anybody else would like to share any points here? Go to the next one, 118:43. Any volunteers who would like to read the Sanskrit? Anyone would like to volunteer to recite? Okay, I'll read. Alakshyamane naradev namni angapana vayamangaloka tadahi chaura prachuro vinamshati. Arakshamano avivarrukthavat All right, translation.
My dear boy, the Lord who carries the wheels of a chariot is represented by the monarchical regime. And when this regime is abolished, the whole world becomes filled with thieves who then once vanquish among the unprotected subjects like scattered lambs.
Thank you so much. So this is Shamik Rishi speaking to his son Shringi. He's saying, my dear boy, the Lord who carries the wheel of a chariot is represented by the monarchical regime. And when this regime is abolished, the whole world becomes filled with thieves, who then at once vanquish the unprotected subjects like scattered lambs. So I'll read the purport. According to Srimad Bhagavatam, the monarchical regime represents the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead. The king is said to be the representative of the absolute personality of Godhead because he is trained to acquire the qualities of God to protect the living beings. The battle of Kurukshetra was planned by Lord to establish the real representative of the Lord. Maharaj Yudhishthir, an ideal king thoroughly trained by culture and devotional service with a martial spirit, makes a perfect king. Such a personal monarchy is far better than so-called democracy of no training and responsibility. The thieves and rogues of modern democracy seek election by misrepresentation of votes, and the successful rogues and thieves devour the mass of population. One trained monarch is far better than hundreds of useless ministerial rogues. And it is hinted herein that by abolition of a monarchical regime like that of Maharaj Parikshit, the mass of people become open to many attacks of the age of Kali. They are never happy in an overly advertised form of democracy. The result of such a kingless administration is described in following verses. Hari Bol. So now, here in the translation, we see that Shamik Rishi is explaining how it is so important to have a very good ruler. And Maharaj Parikshit, of course, was one of the best rulers. And we can see having a strong ruler is so very important. I mean, when I first came across democracy or not democracy, we practically are brought up in a society where we don't even know that there could be something else other than democracy. At least in my childhood, as we were getting trained in the schools and stuff, and we heard about democracy, we practically thought that's how a government is expected to be, and that's what it is, you know. And we assumed democracy is kind of the best thing. The other alternative which people are left with is to choose between a foolish, untrained, exploitative dictator and a democratic government. So obviously people will think, "Arey, democracy is great." But actually, there is a third option also. And that third option, people in this modern age, Kali Yuga right now in 2022, they are not much aware about. Unfortunately, they cannot think of, cannot contemplate. They have so many ifs and buts to even able to even come close to understanding of what kind of, what is the caliber of this personality here, Parikshit Maharaj, and similar such personalities like Yudhishthir Maharaj, Lord Ramchandra, and so on. So, without the king, or without a ruler, without a government, that is a state of mess. We can see so many countries that don't have very strong and stable government. We can see, you know, for example, let's say Afghanistan. Afghanistan was somehow or the other being managed by America. As soon as they left, there was not strong and stable government. And then the people, they themselves started attacking and whole chaos came, and then Taliban came. But also so many other places where there are weak governments, rogues, and these bad elements, they become prominent. And it is a big mess. There are so many examples. So no government is very bad. Now the next is foolish dictatorial type of government. which people can't see. So people come with democracy, which is the third one. And democracy, we can see how short-term success is what democracy is focusing. Why? Because 5 years I have to stay in power. So if I do things which are going to give some results in 5 years, then it's good. Otherwise, longer than that, 20 years, 30 years, they cannot plan like that. While a king like Maharaj Parikshit or Dashrath Maharaj or Yudhishthir Maharaj, they would plan for not just decades but centuries in advance, and they will be selflessly ruling for the benefit of the common man. So no ruler is pretty bad. Having democracy, we can see how democracy is failing. The other is having a dictatorial monarch or a dictatorial person, Hitler, or like right now we see in China, they have one party system and they are just exploiting. And we see so many other countries where is a king, and that king dictates how things should be, and they are very selfish, they are untrained, they are not selflessly ruling for the benefit of the people, but their own selfishness comes first. So all these three are actually what people can think of. So they think, better to go with democracy. But actually there's a fourth one, which is actually much better. In fact, the best. And that's where people need to focus on. If there is no training for one to become a ruler, a king, if there is no culture of how one has to give protection, how a Kshatriya should be, then no culture, no training, obviously the people will be not fit to be ruling in that manner. So that is the reason people in the modern age are so much into distress because of the government, because the government is not the proper kind of government. So the signs of or symptoms of Kali Yuga, how things will go on and how problems will come, this is all described in Srimad Bhagavatam, future chapters. So we see how the government, this kind of a government, rule, exploitative activities, whether it's democracy or non-democracy, it is all going to get worse. And therefore, people really need Krishna consciousness actually. If the rulers become, if the masses become Krishna conscious, then automatically that will help in getting someone who is more Krishna conscious, at least favorable, and that will help the whole society. So it's very, very important that we learn ourselves and we help others to grow, and more people can become Krishna conscious. That is the only hope. So those were some of the thoughts on this particular shloka. Anybody else would like to share some points? All right, so we'll keep moving then. Nobody wants to share anything? Any volunteers who would like to read this? 1:18:44.
I can read. Yes, please go ahead, Mataji. I'll read the next. You go ahead.
Thank you. Tadadyana papamupaitti ananvayam.
Tadadyana
papamupaitti
ananvayam
yannashtanadasya vasorvilumpakat. परस्परं घ्नन्ति शपन्ति वृञ्जते
परस्परं
पशून् स्त्रियोर्थान् पुरुदस्य भोजना पशून् स्त्रियोर्थान् पुरुदस्य भोजना. Translation. Due to the termination of the monarchical regimes and the plundering of the people's wealth by rogues and thieves, there will be great social disruptions. People will be killed and injured, and animals and women will be stolen. And for all these sins, we shall be responsible. I'll just read it again. Due to the termination of the monarchical regimes and the plundering of the people's wealth by rogues and thieves, there will be great social disruptions. People will be killed and injured, and animals and women will be stolen. And for all these sins, we shall be responsible. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The word na, we, is very significant in this verse. The sage rightly takes the responsibility of the Brahmanas as a community for killing monarchical government, and thus giving an opportunity to the so-called democrats, who are generally plunderers of the wealth of the state subjects. The so-called democrats capture the administrative machine without assuming responsibility for the prosperous condition of the citizens. Everyone captures the post for personal gratification, and thus, instead of one king, a number of irresponsible kings grow up to tax the citizens. It is foretold herein that in the absence of good monarchical government, everyone will be the cause of disturbance for others by plundering riches, animals, women, etc. Hare Krishna. Is this Shamik Rishi speaking in this verse?
Yes, he is speaking to Shringi.
Okay. So I think he's doing some predictions for Age of Kali. It sounds like. I don't have much to add. Anybody else would like to add and elaborate? It would be very helpful.
Yeah, thank you for reading. So, like what we discussed, here is the first situation where there is no ruler. We discussed the different types of situations, governances, and the first one was no proper governance is there. So in no proper governance, who is going to protect? Those people who are exploitative are going to actually exploit the society, exploit the innocent, weak, old people, weaker people, poor section of community, children, women. All these will not get proper protection, and there will be great social disruption. This is even before the Prithu Maharaj's birth. This is what was happening. If anybody remembers that past time, they can share more. That how, give me 1 second. That how before Prithu Maharaj, the rogues and these people, they became active. And because of them being active, they finally had to make arrangements so that Prithu Maharaj could appear. So that is a separate detail past time. But this is what was happening. There was a lot of social disruption, and bad elements in the society were getting prevalent, and they were making things miserable for the for the common people. So that is what Shamik Rishi is explaining here. Anybody else would like to add more or share few points? Okay, so we'll go do the next one. Any volunteers who would like to read?
I can read, Prabhuji. Niman, you want to read Sanskrit? Okay. You have food in your mouth?
Yeah.
It's okay. I'll read. Go. Tadarya dharma praviliyate nirnam
Tadarya dharma
praviliyate
praviliyate nrinam
I food stuff.
That's okay. Varna
Varnashramacha
Varna
Tatortakama Viniveshitat Tatmanam Tatmanam
tato arthakama biniveshitatmanam
Trunam Kapinam Iva Varna Shankara
shunam kapinamiva varna shankara.
Hare Krishna. Translation. At that time, the people in general will fall systematically from the path of a progressive citizens in respect to the qualitative engagements of the caste and the orders of society and the Vedic injunctions. Thus, they will be more attracted to economic development for sense gratification. And as a result, there will be an unwanted population on the level of dogs and monkeys. Perfect. It is foretold herein that in the absence of monarchical regime, the general mass of people will be an unwanted population like dogs and monkeys. As the monkeys are too sexually inclined and dogs are shameless in sexual intercourse, the general mass of population born of illegitimate connection will systematically go astray from the Vedic way of good manners and qualitative engagements in the caste and orders of life. The Vedic way of life is the progressive march of the civilization of the Aryans. The Aryans are progressive in Vedic civilization. The Vedic civilization's destination is to go back to Godhead, back home, where there is no birth, no death, no old age, and no disease. The Vedas direct everyone not to remain in the darkness of the material world, but to go towards the light of the spiritual kingdom far beyond the material sky. The qualitative caste system and the orders of life are scientifically planned by the Lord and his representatives, the great rishis. The perfect way of life gives all sorts of instruction in things both material and spiritual. The Vedic way of life does not allow any man to be like the monkeys and dogs. A degraded civilization of sense gratification and economic development is the byproduct of godless and kingless government of the people, by the people and for the people. The people should not therefore begrudge the poor administration they themselves elect. Hare Krishna. So my understanding from this purport, actually it reminds me about Bhagavad Gita, that when Arjuna was actually there in the battlefield, and uh, he was not willing to kill his cousins and and their army. Then, like he said that they are my family, I cannot kill them, he's my grandfather and all that. So Krishna actually told him this concern कि अगर आप नहीं जो है उनको मारोगे तो एक्चुअली अर्जुन वाज कंसर्न कि अगर मैं इनको मार दूंगा या ऐसा हो जाएगा तो आगे जो है वर्ण संकरा जो ये पॉपुलेशन है इसके बढ़ने की जो है चांसेस जो है ज्यादा हो जाएंगे. तो यहाँ पे प्रपाद कह रहे हैं कि ये जो जनरेशन है, ये जो कली युगा के जो लोग हैं, because there is not a good king or a good leader who's a Krishna conscious or who's a God conscious, right? So he, these ministers, they themselves don't know that how to lead their life. They are just trying to accumulate the money for their coming generation or for their kids, and so that they can make their lives better, and they are not concerned about the normal people in their state or their countries. So Prabhupada is saying that people nowadays in Kali Yuga are like monkeys and dogs. So that is why we see that they are so much inclined towards all this stuff, and that is why this generation now, and the people the Varn Sankara are born. So, and they are not they don't have faith in the Vedic literature, and they do not want to live their life as per Vedic as per our scriptures. Whereas in the second paragraph, Prabhupada is saying that the Aryans are progressive in Vedic civilization. So I've heard about Aryans, but I don't know much, so I think I should not say. I would rather love to learn about this, but I don't know. But I'll just go in the next line, that the Vedic civilization destination is to go back to Godhead. So Aryans seems like they're all following the scriptures, and they are God loving people. So for their their target or their the Vedic civilization destination is to go back to Godhead, where there is no birth, no death, and no old age and no disease. So when a king is an Aryan or from like Aryan dynasty, then it is then they can guide their people or people in their kingdom that this is the motive, or this is the destination, or this is a purpose here. So they always keep trying to teach their people so that they can go back to Godhead, and then always trying to make them God conscious. The Vedas direct everyone to remain in the darkness of the material world, but to go towards the light of the spiritual kingdom far beyond the material sky. So our Vedas, like we read Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam or any of the scriptures, right? And back Prabhupada's magazine, like Back to Godhead. So all these scriptures and books by the great acharyas and rishis, they're always guiding us, to go back to Godhead. Back to Godhead, right? And all our Vedas, that's the purpose, so that they can show us the path that we can go back. And then the qualitative caste system and the orders of the life are scientifically planned by the Lord and his devotees. Prabhuji, can you scroll up? I can't see after that. Yeah. Yeah, Prabhuji, thank you. Right, so this जो हमारा वर्णाश्रम है, it's scientifically planned by the Lord, right? Not like that anybody can be Brahmana or Shudra, right? It's scientifically planned. But nowadays people doesn't think about as per the Vedas. They just have their own philosophy of these caste system, and they do it accordingly. The Vedic way of life does not allow any men to be like monkeys and dogs. So it reminds me, I was actually listening to one of Prabhupada's morning walk sessions recently, and then it was, I think it was recorded in Australia. So Prabhupada was walking with some of the devotees, and one of them asked Prabhupada that, something regarding this uh, uh, illegitimate connections, or regarding that some philosopher in some book said about this, that you should actually enjoy or do like this. So Prabhupada actually said, then this human body is not meant for you, right? That you are in a wrong body. You should better be a hog or any dog, because in being in human life, you have so much restriction that you cannot, like as Prabhupada said, I would explain that you cannot, there restriction not being with your cousins, sisters, all that, right? But that is not the case in the animals, right? Then if you really want to enjoy this, and this you think is a purpose of life, then you should rather pray for a body, or you should get a body of a hog or a dog, where you don't have these restrictions. So whenever you want, and you can just, no restrictions like human body. So he very well explained this point, that human body is only for self-realization, and that's what our Vedas actually teaching us. And then I don't know the meaning of last line, Prabhuji. And then Prabhupada is explaining, as most of the purpose, Prabhupada explained that how people are degraded civilization of sense gratification. And the people should not therefore begrudge the poor administration they themselves elect. So is this something that people should not later grudge for the people they are choosing, because they themselves choose them, elect them, and later when they become these rogues and thieves, and then they cry and complain about it? So they should not do it, rather they should make a wiser decision. But it's so difficult nowadays for people also to judge, because when they come for votes, they actually in some other ways, right, they talk something else, and then when they become the ministers and they come in the power for 5 years or more years, then होता है ना, जब आपके पास कोई ऑप्शन नहीं होता, तो बुरे में से कुछ बेटर ही चूज कर लेते हो, 4 बुरे में से थोड़ा कम बुरा. So I think it's just like that. So Prabhupada saying ki, they should not grudge later. So that's my understanding from this purport and translation. Prabhuji and Mataji, please add and correct. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji, for reading and sharing. Mataji, do you see my screen right now?
Yes, Prabhuji, I can see. Yes.
So here in the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, second shloka, Prabhupada mentions who is an Aryan. Do you want to read this?
Prabhuji.
Is it visible?
Yes, Prabhuji, it is visible. May I read करती हूँ. The word Aryan is applicable to persons who know the value of life and have a civilization based on spiritual realization. Persons who are led by the material conception of life do not know the aim of life is realization of the absolute truth, Vishnu or Bhagwan, and they are captivated by the external features of the material world, and therefore they do not know the liberation. Okay, so Aryan is the one who knows the value of life and civilization based on spiritual. Okay, Prabhuji, aa gaya samajh mujhe. Thank you, Prabhuji, for sharing.
Thank you. So anybody else would like to share any points from this?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Very
Prabhuji,
hear your voice after so many days.
I was listening, Prabhuji. So devotees are sharing so nicely.
We also want to listen to you.
I'll try, Prabhuji. I don't have much to share. People have such nice realizations and reflections.
We also want you to have much to share also.
Okay, Prabhuji. I have a question, Prabhuji. Just reading this, actually, I got a question in my mind. So in this, it's saying that, Prabhupada is saying here that Aryan is anybody who has the spiritual conception of life, right? They read by the spiritual principles. So is this anybody, or is it talking about the Aryan race that we hear, the Aryans which are the closer to India and the race that was there, Aryan civilization. Is that so? Is Aryan anybody anywhere in the world who's spiritually inclined or living their life via spiritual realization, or
So Aryan is not a race. That was a Aryan invasion theory, was a wrong conception which was brought in by the Britishers to show that they are the ones from whom Aryan came, and then Germans said no, they are the Aryans. Aryans is not a race. Aryan is the word used for in Vedic context is for those who are elevated in spiritual realizations. So that's what it actually is.
Okay, Prabhuji. Thank you. That was my confusion.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. The Sanskrit meaning of Arya means the noble one. So it is from, in our Sanskrit, Arya ka matlab hota hai बहुत ही प्रतिष्ठित या राजा, somebody who rules. Noble line, lineage को belong करने वाला.
हाँ जी माता जी. So वहाँ से आया है. Thank you.
Yes.
So if somebody, Prabhupada is specifically mentioning here about Aryan and you're saying it is more towards Bharatvarsha in the past, the whole world in one way, many times also called as Bharatvarsha. And in, previous yugas, people were more spiritually advanced all over the world, actually, like in Satyuga. So now it has decreased. So now we hardly find any Aryans.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you. All right. Anybody else would like to share any points from this? So I'll read the translation again. At that time, the people in general will fall systematically from the path of progressive civilization in respect to the qualitative engagement of the castes and the orders of the society and the Vedic injunctions. Thus, they will be more attracted to economic development for sense gratification, and as a result, there will be an unwanted population on the level of dogs and monkeys. So this is the fear which these great personalities are having, that people will go away from from Vedic culture. And now we see the great personalities are already seeing these people in the level of dogs and monkeys, and these great personalities are making all the efforts tirelessly to bring these people of Kali Yuga, including myself, from this consciousness of dogs and monkeys to the consciousness of the Aryans. So that's the reason we see Srila Prabhupada and so many of Prabhupada's followers, his disciples, grand disciples, traveling all across the world tirelessly and working so hard, totally neglecting their comfort or discomfort or whatever, just with this concern to bring Krishna consciousness to the people. And this is very fulfilling for them, because when we see great personalities, they are par dukkha dukhi. In modern world, people are par sukha dukhi. They see other people's happiness, they become envy and jealous. So other people happiness is their distress. And par dukkha sukhi, other people's distress, their happiness. Such and such person did not get promotion, but I got promotion. Oh, very nice. Thank you. Such and such person, he could not get so much material success, but I got material success. Yes. But great personalities, they are paradukha dukhi. And they are seeing, people are engaging in all sorts of other activities, trying to get some happiness, trying to suck some juice out of whatever material hankering they have, but they are not getting anything. But we are getting spiritual nectar. Why don't we share it with others and let them also be happy? So making other people happy gives them happiness, because they don't want to be seeing people in distress. So that was the concern of Shamak Rishi back then. And we see in the same way, great saintly people are also having that concern even right now. They're always thinking how we can preach, how we can distribute books, how we can take this science and bring it to other people. And every opportunity they get, they actually talk about Krishna. So Srila Prabhupada, his morning walk conversation or any other writings you see, he'll be bring Krishna to anything. Even Srila Prabhupada is bringing medical practitioner here. Sometimes he brings electricity and fridge and heater example. That same electricity goes to the heater but brings heat, and same electricity goes to the fridge and brings cold. So electricity is the same, but how it's changed. So like that, different examples Prabhupada is giving, all relating to Krishna. We can become Krishna conscious more and more, the more we can internalize these books, read them, discuss them, hear them, share them. All right. Thank you all the devotees for sharing such nice points. I think we are coming towards the end of today's conference call. Anyone would like to make any points before we conclude? All right. So we'll conclude. Granth Raj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.